welcome everyone. My name is Benjamin, and together with Carmen, we'll walk you through our analytics and AI offering in this afternoon session. So we both work in the database platforms product management team, and we're really excited to kind of be able to give you an overview of some of the things that we're working on, some of the things that we did recently, and really, most importantly, how everything fits together. And I think we want to stand a little further away from the microphone, whatever, not the microphone. So this is an overview session. So we'll be scratching some surface. We won't be going into too much technical detail. For technical detail, there is the Tech Exchange. At the end of this session, we'll give you some pointers to some exciting other sessions in the main conference and in the Tech Exchange that go into more detail about individual pieces of the portfolio that we're talking about here. All right. So what are we going to talk about? First, a little bit of intro. That analytics is really all about the data. Then we're going to go through a couple of real scenarios, an application dashboard, a modeling, a machine learning exercise, and then some end-user analytics. And then we'll close off by kind of wrapping it up and presenting you our vision for a data product experience. All right, so it's all about the data. What is analytics and AI about? Data. And the more data you have, the better your AI gets. The more complex your data is, the more complex your analytics is. So there is no analytics, there is no AI if you're not talking about, or if you don't have a good data strategy, if you don't have a good data platform that can deliver that data to your analytics end user tool, to your machine learning algorithm, to your AI bot. So that's why we think that the data platform has a very important role to play in this story, and that's what we're going to focus on today. So let's call that the data supply chain. So, and because we like puns, in order to explain the data supply chain, we'll use supply chain data. And it's actually a fairly practical or a fairly good analogy, because in supply chain, data moves fast, like goods move fast. Your FedEx packages, they move fast. If we've got customers like Murata Systems in Japan who have like warehouse systems with automated bots that use InterSystems IRIS to coordinate the fast transactions with those robots go pick up parcels. We've got marts shipping containers, MSC, who kind of orchestrate the flow of containers of 20 million containers that are at various places in the globe with our platform. And we've got UST, who kind of keeps that overview of the data with InterSystems IRIS. So that data supply chain, being able to support the transactional piece, the really fast transactions, as well as keeping the overview and the orchestration of the whole thing, having dashboards that tell you where your goods are spread, that really kind of is a nice analogy between the supply chain and data. Now, I put this big disclaimer here, also as a shout out to our supply chain team. So they have a session later today that is about our supply chain solution. So in this session, we're just using the data model, and we're just kind of making abstraction of the application that runs on top. So as a little mental exercise, let's focus on the data here, and let's go watch at 4:30 what we offer in the solution space with our supply chain orchestrator offering. All right, with that out of the way, let's meet our data consumers. So Amy, Dana, and Bob, they're the ones that are going to use this data. They have different skill sets, they have different tool preferences, but they're all going to use our supply chain data. So let's take a closer look at what they're doing here. All right, this is a simplified version of a subsection of the supply chain data model. This is textbook modeling for an application. It's a nicely normalized thing with lots of relationships. A normalized schema means that you've kind of decomposed your data in all small pieces, such that when you need to execute a transaction, that transaction needs to change as little as possible, that there's as little duplication as possible, such that your transactions are small and fast. That's great. And if you think that, well, what is he talking about? This doesn't look any way complicated, then you're exactly where I want you to be, because of course it can get even more complicated than this, and that just illustrates the point even more. So it's an operational model, lots of relationships, lots of small tables. That's great, but not exactly for our data consumers, because they need to connect to that data. They need to be able to kind of join the tables that belong together. They need to piece that back together, apply some filtering, apply some aggregation in order to get what they want, to get the data in the shape that they're actually going to work with. And now, unless there's anybody from UPS in the room, I'm going to tell a FedEx company secret. When the FedEx guy shows up on your doorstep with a parcel, he didn't drive all the way from China to your place to deliver exactly that parcel. Supply chains usually are really well organized, and they really try to group work together and kind of find some common ground and make sure that they can use a container ship, that they can use a big truck, a small truck, a bicycle to do the kind of best way to deliver the data. So that unification, that kind of grouping of things, that intermediate stage, that getting your data analytics ready, that is the data supply chain. That's what the data supply chain is all about. Building an analytical model that is simple, that is easy to use, that does not have these 25 different relationships that you need to walk to get from A to B. That's what an analytical data model is about. So it's flat or almost flat, maybe a little star schema with some very obvious few joins. Maybe some data duplication, because you're no longer interested in the transaction part. You're just interested in keeping the usage simple, keeping the queries simple. Think about Excel. There is a reason why in Excel you can only ever see one sheet at a time. Well, unless you're kind of having side-by-side screens. It's because that's a nice mental model to do your analyses. All right, with that out of the way, let's start walking through Amy, Dana, and Bob's scenario and kind of show you how we help with that supply chain.
Great, thank you, Benjamin. So I'm going to play the role of Amy here. And in this first scenario, we're going to take her perspective and what she needs to do. She's an application developer who needs to work with the operational data that we saw and prepare it to answer some questions about on-time and late shipment tracking. So for Amy, designing a good analytic model takes a combination of understanding those end user requirements and understanding what's available in the data. So it's a combination of both of those things. And as Benjamin said, what she's going to do is work to flatten and denormalize that data so that it's well prepared for us to do a couple of different analytical use cases with it. And in InterSystems, we have a product that has been part of InterSystems IRIS and IRIS for Health for a long time called InterSystems IRIS BI, and it is purpose-built for that, for allowing you to take that operational or transactional data and create an analytical model on top of it. Now, the typical questions that Amy would probably ask her end users in this case are, what are the most important pieces of information to track? How do you want to filter? How do you want to summarize? Because that'll define, some of the dimensions and measures that she needs to collect. And then how will the data be used? Will it be used to push that information to someplace else? In her case, it's going to be about creating a dashboard for her end users. And typically, this kind of design process is iterative, working with the end business users and coming back around, and changing the model and solving that question. So I'm going to actually have this demo run through how we would do this with InterSystems IRIS. And this InterSystems IRIS BI is embedded, as I said, into InterSystems IRIS. And application designers or developers like Amy would typically take that large set that you see of available data there, the data that's available in that operational model, and start to organize it in that center pane. So that's what's happening there. And I'm creating a couple of things. I'm doing some hierarchy development there so that I can do drill down by things like time. And I'm pulling that data together to create what's needed for my end users and what's going to be needed for those different analytical components that I'm creating. So I'm also going to create in this some listings that will allow me to not just drill down in those hierarchies, but also kind of drill into other types of information that I might need for those end users. And once I have that in a denormalized form that I think is good to go, I can then go to the next step, which is to look at this inside the analyzer tool. So I'm now going to switch over to that as a different, essentially typically a different user. So this might be my other business user who has a little more knowledge about what they want to see on those dashboards. And they might want to do a little slicing to figure out what else I need to see. So the first thing I've done here is looked at things by carrier, DHL, FedEx, UPS. And I've also looked at delivered and not delivered, but then I realized, what I really want are just to look at the things that have been delivered. So I'm actually going to set that as a filter so that I'm only looking at the delivered and not delivered. And then, as I said, one of the key pieces of information that I wanted to look at was how many late shipments do I have versus how many on time versus how many early. There actually are some that are early, hard to believe. So I'm going to actually pull that information over as well. And then I might want to kind of test some things out and do some what-if scenarios with that to try and figure out things like, does it have anything to do with the location, for example, of where that data is coming from. So now you can see I've got the early, the on-time, and the late deliveries listed out there. So again, this is all just kind of slicing and testing things out as I'm preparing this for what I want to show eventually on my dashboard. And so now I've taken state and I've taken a look at, is it because it's coming from certain states? It doesn't seem to be. It's pretty distributed across all those states. Massachusetts is a little heavy, so they may be a little bit slow. So I might want to drill into that a little bit and take a look at that. And then once I'm happy with how I've kind of set that up and I have that model where I want it to be, I'm then going to take it over to the dashboard. And before I do that, I'm just going to mention what I'm going to show you is a little sneak peek of some things to come. So we have an existing dashboard inside of IRIS BI, which maybe you've seen already. It's used in some of our other products as well, TrackCare and HealthShare. But I'm going to show you a sneak peek of what our new dashboard user interface is going to look like. And if you want to know more about that, I have a session tomorrow at the end of the day if you want to learn a little bit more about what that's going to look like. But what we've basically done is taken the existing dashboards that we have, and we're going to provide a sort of an overlay on top of those dashboards. And this is what that's going to look like. So it's going to take the existing, if you have existing IRIS BI dashboards, it's going to re-render those in this UI. So, and this is something that is now embeddable in applications and allows you to take existing dashboards that you might have or create new ones and that look this way. And then you can kind of play around with those as well, add filtering, do sorting. All of that kind of stuff happens within that new dashboard user interface. So this is basically intended for Amy's end-to-end customer. So she had her first customer there who was doing a little bit of slicing and dicing, exploring that data, exploring that model. And then the final product would go to her, the end users who really just need to see what's going on and understand where those late shipments are happening. So to kind of summarize both what you just saw and also what we've done with this data supply chain is what you saw me do there with that operational data is take the architect and basically lay that out, flatten that information out, figure out what things were important to my end users to see and to the various consumers that we have that are using those analytics. And then I handed that off to somebody who probably is going to go in and take a look at that data in more detail, maybe iterate with me about what else is needed, what other metrics are needed, using the analyzer to kind of drag and drop that across. And then finally, we see the end result, which is the dashboard. And so you can see for our end users, that's what things are going to look like. And that's how they're going to track which shipments are late and which ones are on time. And with that, we'll go back to our second scenario.
Thank you, Carmen. So that was a first scenario in which we extended our application with some real-time information that was just in a dashboard that was made part of the application. In the next one, we'll explore a scenario that is also very common in supply chain, trying to estimate which things are going to arrive on time and which things are not going to arrive on time, and ideally be able to do something about it for the ones that aren't going to arrive on time. Our supply chain orchestrator product has some really cool decision intelligence capabilities about it, so if you're interested to learn more about those, please join us at 4:30 for that session. What I'm going to show you now is a little more mundane, but just to show you, if you're starting from the data as is, how that would look like. So again, I recorded a demo because we just like supply chain. We want to end on time. But if you're interested, we can dig into much more detail if you want, because we've got the demo system running live, and it has an unguessable password, so nobody can really access it. So we'll start again from that same analytical model that Carmen just showed you. And as a machine learning user, as our Dana, we can go take a look at that data, see if it's good. Okay, I've got my actual delay column, and that's what I want to use to predict. You can't quite see it, but if you drop down that action there, you can jump immediately into a Jupyter notebook that follows a little template that we created, and that automatically lays out a machine learning framework. All we need to do is tell it which column we want to predict. So that's what I'm doing now, just fill in the predicted column thing. And then we'll just let the notebook complete and run all of its stuff. It's going to shake up and down a little bit, but it should really work. So we're connecting to IRIS. We're going to fetch the data that corresponded to the cell that we were just looking at. And you can see that the data is all nicely there. Then we can, if you're not too epileptic, you can see that we have some metrics about the data, null value analysis, and some basic data distribution. And after that, we know the data that we were just looking at is valid. So we'll fire up H2O. H2O is a really nice machine learning library with some automation in it. So what we'll do now is we'll get rid of the ID columns that we really don't need. We'll split our data, good data science practices, into training, test, and validation data set. We'll set our actual delay that we want to predict, and then we just let H2O dig through it. And H2O, we're using automated machine learning, will come up with a set of candidate models, and it will tell us which one is best. And then we can see the metrics of the model that came out as best, some cross-validation results, so it really made an effort to do it properly. And then at the end, we're going to, what you're seeing here is us plotting the actual delay versus the predicted delay. And you see that it's actually doing a rather reasonable job, even though this was like toy-sized data. And then finally, we're saving our model to the database such that we can include it in any further work we want to do in the application. Maybe Amy wants to take advantage of it in the next dashboard, or maybe our next user wants to include it in his Excel sheet. So this demo only scratched the surface of machine learning, but the important part there is that little jump from that architect environment, from that analyzer environment that was just browsing the data that we had nicely modeled. We jumped straight into a Jupyter notebook, a familiar tool for machine learning enthusiasts to kind of get going with the data. For the machine learning part itself, because I'm just a mortal, I used the easy button. I used automated machine learning, which automatically tests a bunch of things. But of course, you can do anything you want. If you're interested, our colleague Tom Dyar has a more elaborate demo that goes through a lot more actual machine learning. So if you're interested, we can show that as well. What AutoML also does behind the scenes is it generates additional features. For example, for the carrier fields, it has a couple of values: DHL, FedEx, UPS. Most machine learning algorithms don't like text; they prefer numbers. So it will split that. It will use one-hot encoding and create additional columns like carrier is DHL, 1 or 0. Carrier is UPS, 1 or 0. That kind of stuff is not something that Amy wants to show in her dashboard. So that's more on the data consumer side here. That's on our ML consumer of the analytical model. So that's why we don't do that type of feature engineering on the analytical model side, but we make it available here. And then at the end, as you saw, we're saving the model back to SQL such that we can incorporate it into the next iteration of our model to kind of orient ourselves again in our supply chain. So we're again taking advantage of the same model that we used, and now we're in this notebook environment and doing all of the fun machine learning things. All right, so we've had Amy, we've had Dana, now it's time for Bob, who is a little less technical than the previous ones. So Bob is just wants to get the data in Excel and wants to be able to use what all business analysts use. And whether you like it or not, Excel is still the most widely used tool for analytics, for kind of working with data. It's just a really practical tool. So we'd better make sure that people can really take advantage of their modeling work in Excel. So for this, we've got another demo. And in this demo, so Bob is not going to go into some other tool. He's just going to open Excel, pull in data using an ODBC connector, ODBC, very standard protocol. I'm selecting my Ready 25 connection. And then I'm going to look at a SQL rendering of my cube definition, a nice flattened view that has all of the modeling stuff that we looked at in the previous two examples also taken care of. So it's using the nice column names that we put into the architect, and now it's kind of pulling that data into Excel such that we can start investigating it there, and that we can do the business analyst thing. We can throw in a pivot table. We can build some charts. We can take advantage of all of the magic that a business user wants. So again, the important thing that we want to show here is that there's this phase of building your data, building your analytical model, and then you've got this wealth of consuming utilities. And for those of you that are familiar with IRIS BI as it currently exists in our product, it's maybe a little bit of a mental jump because we've traditionally kind of tied those things a lot together, but we really want to move more towards that data supply chain as something to build your analytical model, and then all these different consumers that you can use, that you can consume that data model from. So this is where that fits. We've got our spreadsheet that just takes advantage of the model that you built in the architect module. We were just using a simple ODBC connection to get to that flattened view of our cube. That was fine for this particular use case, and we were able to take advantage of all of the modeling that you saw before. But for those of you that are familiar with our portfolio, you may wonder, well, didn't you have a specialist product for that? Indeed, Adaptive Analytics is sort of the premium version of the experience that you just saw. We were just using the flattened version of it. But if you want to have like the full dimensional stuff that you defined first in your analytical model, and if you want to have that not just in Excel, but in Excel, Tableau, Power BI, Qlik, all of those end user tools, we've got a premium version of that modeling experience and the kind of that pushes all of that metadata, that pushes that semantic information into those BI tools, and that's called Adaptive Analytics. On top of that, Adaptive Analytics can also build and maintain interim aggregates of your analytical model to transparently speed up query performance. Note also that any modeling that you did on the architect side can be converted into an Adaptive Analytics model as a starting point for that further enrichment, that semantic enrichment of your model. So how would that look? If you use that add-on product, then you're kind of taking advantage of the Adaptive Analytics modeling environment and use BI tools at your leisure. Great. So yet another way of consuming our model. Oops. Bob has yet another question. So whether this was his own question or it was the kind of business manager that he ran into in the cafeteria, doesn't really matter. So the point here is Bob may also want to access some data that wasn't necessarily already available in the analytical model. He might have some random question. So how can we go about that? How does InterSystems help Bob with this problem? So Bob doesn't know SQL, so he's not gonna go look at that crazy complicated schema. That wasn't very crazy because yours is much more complicated, I know. But for this, we've got a solution, and I'm sure you'll learn more about that in the supply chain session as well, called natural language querying. Natural language querying is the practice of turning a natural language text question into actual SQL. This isn't an animated demo because all you want to see is right here. And we'll dive into what is behind this GUI in just a second. But what you're seeing here is we're asking the question, and then we're not just getting the query as an answer, we're doing all this nice generative AI stuff to also run the query and interpret the results, telling us, no, there's no supplier that can still get us syringes before July 4th. And also, it explains what the query was doing in natural language text. So for Bob, this is a real help. He gets an answer to his question, and he gets to learn a little bit of SQL on the go, if he's interested. So what's behind this? And this is a little dense, so we'll build this up. So we've got our user question that we start from. And in the background, we've sort of looked at our model, and as part of our natural language querying infrastructure, or template, if you will, pardon me, we've built embeddings for some of the columns and for our table structure. What are embeddings? Embeddings are vector representations of text or other types of content that we can use or that we can search to find similar information. So let's see what that means. So the first step in this workflow is that we'll use named entity recognition, a little bit of text analysis to identify what are the concepts what are the entities, I should say, in this question. I can see July 4 is a date. And I see some other things here. I see suppliers, I see syringes. So what we can do now is we can use vector search, a capability of InterSystems IRIS, to search through those embeddings for specific column values that would be similar to syringes. So, and I find that in my supply chain data.product table, there are values in the product type column that say syringe. So great, that's something I can use. And I'm also doing a vector search on the table, and I know that suppliers is actually a table name that is relevant to answering the question. And now with that information, I'm going to look up the schema information for the tables that were here, the tables that were here in the relevant entities, and then I'm going to look for schema information that connects those. So I'm going to look for foreign key relationships, and I'm just going to present all of that information together as one big package to our LLM. And then I'm going to tell the LLM, please, always being polite, please generate a SQL. Oh, I wasn't too polite when I was writing this slide, but generate a SQL statement using the information above that answers the user's question, and then also explain it and run it, and then you can go figure that out. So we feed that to the large language model, and then get this nice query back. So that's what's happening in the background, behind the interface that you just saw. And if you're interested in learning more about this, learning more about vector search, there's plenty of sessions this week that go into more detail about this topic. So that was kind of a second leg of our third use case. So now let's kind of put all of those things back together. So we're still talking about data. We're still talking about the same data. We had 3 different use cases, 3 totally different personas with totally different skill sets, tools, preferences that they had. Bob had 2 completely different things, but they were very non-technical. What's common is that they're all making use of the same data. They're all getting back at that same data supply chain. They're sharing their data supply chain. And that is what we want to help you with when you work with InterSystems IRIS. If you use InterSystems IRIS to implement analytics use cases, to implement machine learning AI use cases, we want to help you get your data supply chain organized such that your data consumers can start pulling in exactly what they need in a in a format that is ready for consumption. So back to our diagram, but who said that these need to be two separate databases? These need to be two different things, different technologies. With InterSystems IRIS, we want to be able to, we want to help you organize your data supply chain within a single technology, within a single platform that is able to get you from your operational data into data that is ready for universal analytical consumption. And that's really the advantage. The advantage that we have is really that we can use all of the metadata you have on the operational side, so the structural metadata, but also the data distribution, because we know the data, we're storing it, we're managing it. And it's also helpful to automate the building of the pipeline. We know the technology this is stored in. We know, or you're telling us what you want your analytical model to be. So we can automatically generate the pipeline to populate your analytical model, your data mart, if you will. Or we can project it, and we can just build a view for it if you don't want it to be duplicated, or if there's no need for it to be duplicated. And then we're making that available through a combination of SQL and MDX as is required for your specific usage scenario. So that is how InterSystems IRIS helps you with your data supply chain. A couple of relevant roadmap items. So Carmen already mentioned Iris BI Boost as a nice new rendering layer for your Iris BI dashboards. So more about that tomorrow in a dedicated session. And then I already hinted at that. Currently, Iris BI lets you materialize your analytical model as an MDX cube with some SQL access offered. We're going to spend a little more time to make that more flexible, give you more lightweight cube options, make it more comprehensible for SQL in the aggregate. On the AI and machine learning side, we're working on this notebook experience at the demos and drinks tonight. You'll see Peter Stuywer give you a demonstration of what I showed you in the second demo to jump immediately from your BI environment into a notebook. And he's got another nice template that starts building charts for you. We're also working on templates for RAG and natural language querying environments. So more about that in a bit. In the session the panel session that Tom Dyar is hosting, I think next door or here. And then there's also some work ongoing on designing an AI gateway that's more in an application development kind of environment, but that's also something that we're doing in the broader AI area. So to kind of summarize the benefits or kind of zoom out a little bit to the broader benefits of organizing your, data supply chain with IRIS. So IRIS is about a common data model for a common data plane that allows you to manage not just your relational data, which is what we focused on here, but we also allow you to store document data, object data, key value data, vectors in IRIS and access them through the interfaces that you've seen, thanks to our multi-model architecture. And all the metadata is in one place. Shift-left analytics is about kind of making sure that we can put some of the processing closer to where the original data is. If you're working with Iris BI, it's really it's literally in the same system. Data doesn't have to leave Iris. If you're using integrated ML, we've kind of pushed the machine learning also into the same system. And if your data is not yet in InterSystems IRIS, if it still lives upstream in some other source system, Data Fabric Studio, for which there's also a couple sessions later in the program this week, can help you with building pipelines to get data into IRIS and organize it in the way that you see fit. So that's kind of more like a more high-level solution that offers you low-code and no-code interfaces for organizing those pipelines to onboard data from various sources. That's where we are. That's our current portfolio. Now let's look a little bit ahead. What is our vision for analytics? And you see the word data product here. So let's take a quick look at what our friends from Gartner define as a data product. There's lots of words here, lots of expensive words. It's Gartner after all. And clearly it says more than just analytical data model with nice column names. But what is important to take away from this slide is that indeed a data product is not just about delivering data and telling you which column is which, but it's really about kind of managing your data as a product. So you can think of this as a level of service that you offer to your consumers. So a data management maturity model in which they're having just raw data, just a file sitting somewhere or having a table somewhere. The data is accessible, great, but that's not very forthcoming. That's not really serving your consumers well. Now, if you can build a data catalog around that documents that data, that gives you more metadata about what does every column mean, how do different tables hang together, that is a producer-centric data catalog. That's kind of cataloging what I have and do with it as you please. And then that's kind of where we are today. And then the next stage is this data product stage, where we're no longer just talking about the basic trivial metadata, but really about a consumer-centric data marketplace, where the data quality is guaranteed, where there's published metrics about the quality of your data that you can observe, where data is versioned. You can subscribe to updates of your data product, and access is governed. So it's really kind of a managed system. It's really, there's a data product manager that's looking after this and making sure that this is fit for use. So it's really more consumer focused than just producer focused. So that is our vision. And this is what that could look like. This is just a concept picture, a mock-up of like a portfolio of data products that you as a data consumer can start from and then build on. So what are the different areas that we're working on to kind of move towards this future? So we're going to be working on data discovery, like make it easier to discover information in source systems, do some data profiling, do some data quality assessment, and also augment your data modeling capabilities to make it quicker and easier to build your analytical model out of those, to build your data products. We're going to be working on metadata management, that data quality, that observable data quality that I mentioned earlier, such that you can really publish those quality metrics as part of your product kind of listing, if you will. And then the integrated experience that's fully focused on the consumer, making sure that you can easily browse the portfolio of data products, and that from there you can easily launch your consumer application, your notebook, that you can easily connect it to your Excel environment, etc. So those are some of the areas that we're focused on as we evolve towards that vision. With that, we're kind of at the end. So with data, so this is the mandatory marketing terminology slide. So when data is in IRIS, you're already ready for all of your reporting, for your analytics, for your machine learning and AI solutions. We haven't talked that much about reporting, but that's also one of those data consumers, and we'll have another demo of that later tonight in the demos and drinks event if you're interested to learn more about that, because we've got the specialists sitting here in the front row. If you're interested to try any of our bleeding edge capabilities, please check out the early access programs. You'll see this slide in every session, so you can probably memorize the QR code by the end of this show, or you can just look it up in the app from where you can also jump and join any of those programs.
Yeah, and check back to that regularly, because we do update that as new early access programs are available.
Yes, that's right. Thank you, Carmen.
Yeah.
Talking about the app, please please also check in and share your feedback, because we're really always curious to see how we can make sure that the content makes as much sense for you as possible, and make sure that in Ready 2026 it's even better than Ready 2025. I promised a couple of additional sessions. The template only had room for 6, but there's really a hell of a lot of stuff to show. If you check out the Tech Exchange, you'll see that there's also a bunch of nice demos. I think there's also, for those of you that are working with HealthShare Health Insight, Tomorrow, Candy's presenting a session that's dedicated to that as well. That also would have fitted nicely on this. But with that, I think we have exactly 5 minutes for questions left. So I think that is in terms of supply chain accuracy, that is a job achieved, goals achieved, on time in full. Yeah. So thank you. And if there's any questions, please ask them now or ask them in the hallways.
Thank you.
Any questions? Anyway, we're around. Okay,
There's one.
Is there a microphone for in the room? Otherwise, you can stand up and I'll just repeat it if I can. So
yeah, I'll take that one. Yeah, is the question what is IRIS BI and how do I get it? Yeah, so IRIS BI is a component of InterSystems IRIS and IRIS for Health that is available with most of our IRIS and IRIS for Health licenses. If you have advanced server or if you have one of the user-based licenses, it is included. And so the intention is to allow you to build analytical models. So you saw that in the demo. And then ultimately, create dashboards on that. So it's got really those three components: the thing that allows you to build models, cubes, the thing that allows you to kind of drill in and the analyzer and drag and drop and figure out, what's going on. And then the third part of it is the dashboard building. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I've seen the architecture stuff, but I haven't seen the dashboard.
Oh, so I sneak peeked. Something that we're in the process of adding right now. So I'm going to talk a lot more about that tomorrow in the very last session. There's a 20-minute session about a new look for IRIS BI. And so we are adding a dashboarding layer kind of on top of our existing dashboarding layer. So the great thing is that this is the punchline. You don't have to do anything to get access to it. You go to a different URL. So, yep.
Any other question? Yes?
I'm not familiar with BI, but on the AI side, branding is the guardrails against it to respond to a query. Should you do anything or question and answers to make sure you get that reliably bring back the right answer?
So we have the question is whether we had to add any guardrails to make that AI module, that Copilot, generate proper responses. And the answer is yes, because AI is really good at hallucinations. I mentioned that this is a tool that we offer in our supply chain solution, and that we're working on templates that help you build an NLQ solution in your application, because there's always going to be these specifics. The guardrails specifically are something that is going to be somewhat different depending on what you want to achieve. In this example, I know that they have an evaluation set of sample questions and answers, and when they change something, they kind of reevaluate whether the quality is going up or down. I don't think in this solution in particular there is an additional check built in, like after it gets the response, that it goes and checks whether it runs the query and it checks whether the query is valid syntax, but I don't think it does like the kind of ethical safety AI stuff that some other solutions might require. But we have also, I think there's a session about our use of AI in HealthShare, where they will go into a little more detail about that kind of additional steps in the workflow. Otherwise, well, thanks again for joining us, and hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.